very much. I guess we've overcome a few minor technical difficulties here, and I see my slides are on the screen, so this is great. I was thinking about kind of when I first learned about Nuffield, and it actually, there's an Australian connection. In 2006, I was working at the University of Guelph in Ontario, Canada, with an Australian graduate student whose brother, I believe it was Robert Kelly, was a Nuffield scholar, was coming through Ontario. So they asked me to come and join and spend some time with them talking about grain production. So since then, I've always kind of kept Nuffield in the back of my mind, and had the opportunity in 2012 to become a Canadian Nuffield scholar. So I'm going to just share a little bit about my background and where we farm and some of the things that I'm involved in, and then a little bit about my project in about 12 or 15 minutes here. So I'm actually in the middle of my independent travel. I traveled in February and March with the Global Focus program, and are now spent some time in the UK in July, and just got here on Tuesday, and I'll be spending a few weeks in Australia before returning home. So I have kind of two roles at home. I work full-time for the organization, the Grain Farmers of Ontario, and the Grain Farmers of Ontario is our levy body that collects a check-off from corn, soybean, and wheat producers in Ontario, and I manage our research and market development programs. And I have a part-time grain farm near the small community of Ripley, Ontario, and have a wife and a 6- and 8-year-old at home. So our farm is a small farm, comparatively about 200 hectares, part-time operation with my father and I. And we grow in rotation grain corn, food-grade soybeans, milling quality winter wheat, and navy beans in typically a 3-year rotation. And our farm is about 5 kilometers from the shores of Lake Huron. And the whole farming area is really influenced heavily by the Great Lakes. So we're surrounded by the 5 Great Lakes, which have about 21% of the world's fresh surface water. And certainly, I think traveling around the world, I realized how much we take water and fresh water for granted in our part of the world. It's certainly not even something we think too much about, but it's just always there. It's something to make sure it's there for the future. But certainly, those Great Lakes have a big influence on our climate. We do get about 770 millimeters of rain. About 500 millimeters of that is during our growing season, which is typically from May to September. We have about 150 frost-free days. Last frost is typically around May 5th, right when we're planting corn, and around the 1st of October is typically our first frost. We do get, on average, about 2.8 meters of snow, typically December, January, and February. So if anybody's planning a trip to Ontario during those months, maybe give me a call first, and we'll make sure the roads are open. But we do have 4 very distinct seasons, and this picture was just taken a couple weeks ago, just out our front porch. And leaves are starting to turn. They're pretty well all gone by now. And in a couple months, that'll be the view out the front porch. But we do get some nice summers. So we do have probably 10 to 15 days over 30 through July, and some nice beaches to get up to. They might hit 23 or 24 degrees, if that. So right now we're just finishing up corn harvest at home. That's typically our last crop to be harvested. This past year we had basically no rain from mid-June to the 1st of August, so our yields have been hit quite badly, but we had some good heat and some rain in August that helped the crop, so we're going to come in about average. And we grow a 3-year rotation corn. Following corn, we put soybeans. This is just a picture of a typical field in July. And then harvest our soybeans in late September, and those fields are direct seeded right into winter wheat. And we have a pretty narrow planting window. We typically can get rain or weather that just doesn't suit, so we often are really pushing to get our wheat in and often we'll be combining and planting in the same field on the same day. What we've been working with a little bit over the last few years is some cover crops following wheat. Red clover underseeded in March when the frost is still in and out of the ground, tends to work the seed into the ground. But you need enough moisture through June to keep it going. This year it was pretty dry, so we've been experimenting a bit with oats and oilseed radish, and had a pretty good luck with that this year. So it's kind of interesting, it's something different that we've been playing around with. In terms of my project, really what I'm planning in the process of looking at is ways to form research partnerships to maximize our productivity gains. So really trying to find partnerships that involve farmers, farm organizations, government, and private industry, and see how those partnerships work together to move research forward and get commercialized products into the hands of farmers. So really trying to find public-private partnerships that are working and functioning well. And one of the reasons I see that as important is that in Ontario agriculture, we're small globally. Total acres of corn, soy, and wheat together are about 5.5 million acres. And we have a few disadvantages and a few advantages that I think we can use to our advantage. We have a high cost of production, high labor costs. Because we have short windows of planting and harvesting, we probably have more equipment costs per acre than a lot of areas of the world. We have some risks. We have a lot of different diseases due to our mild and fairly damp, humid climate in the summertime. But we do get high output. We're probably the highest yielding winter wheat area in North America that isn't irrigated. And we have good grain handling and infrastructure for segregating our crop. And we're close to the market. We have about 130 million people within a 10-hour drive of home, because we're so close to the U.S. and the eastern U.S., so New York's about an 8-hour drive. But one thing that we've seen is it's difficult to attract private industry investment into genetics for our specific area. And that is specifically true for wheat. And so we're looking at that in combination of declining government support for wheat breeding and public breeding programs, and really looking at what can we do to revitalize those programs. And this just shows kind of our 30-year yield trend provincially. The top line there, I'll just draw your attention to, is our corn yield. So we've seen actually some fairly dramatic increases in corn yield, and a lot of that is just the intensity of breeding and research that goes into it. It's primarily the 5 big multinational players have GM corn traits, and a lot of our genetics cross over into the U.S. where the bigger acres are, so we're able to use elite corn genetics that work in our environment. When we look at wheat, our yields are very much fairly stagnant right now, and a lot of that I attribute to the lack of intensity of breeding. So we're looking at ways to improve that right now, and I guess 4 points that I'd like to share with you that I think I've kind of learned through the Global Focus Program and some of the travel that I've been able to go on. And first, and it's something that I think I hear almost every day. Maybe I'm watching for it, but the looming global food crisis, and certainly the media and the mainstream media has really picked up on that in North America, at least, with the U.S. drought in the Midwest and so on this year. And kind of, I guess, flying in the face of that a little bit was when we traveled on our Global Focus Program. It seemed like every farmer in every country that we visited, they were really investing in how do I increase more. Kind of the farmers were just saying, well, give me more research, give me more tools, and I'll produce more crop. And so the FAO has a very comprehensive report on projections out to 2050. And I found it interesting that what they're predicting is annual growth demand will actually start to slow to about 1.1% per year, and that if we do continue good research and investment and making progress, we'll actually be able to achieve that goal. So I think that's a pretty encouraging message that I learned over the last little while. Secondly, one of the things I learned in terms of research partnerships that is key is understanding your market position and goals. And I really saw that in the UK in some of their wheat breeding programs where, for example, they have a Wheat 2020 program where their ultimate goal is 20 tons per hectare within 20 years. And so that's a bold goal, but they've got a big research program rallying around that. And we're trying to do some of that forecasting and setting goals for our crops in Ontario. Third, the public-private partnership models. There isn't just one off-the-shelf model that works, but I've come across some key things that I think are important to success. As I mentioned, defining your goals and your market position. Proactive farmers and having farmers actively involved in setting up and organizing the system, I think, is key because it keeps it practical and oriented to what we need. And the third, and perhaps the most important, is that defined intellectual property rules and ownership are key going into partnerships with multiple players. And certainly one other observation that I'm not sure if it's accurate or not, but it just seems to be, it could be coincidental, but a lot of partnerships that I've seen tend to be in response to declining government funding for research. And certainly we're seeing that in Canada. I think it's kind of accelerating some of the change in the industry taking charge. And so it may not be the right approach to making it happen, but certainly that maybe speeds up the change. And fourth, turning ideas into action. I think I really learned that on the Global Focus program, where we met with countless farmers and business people that basically had a good idea, didn't know where it would end, but they went with it. They just took action and they found partners along the way and were able to turn it into something really big. And so I have the good fortune to be able to be involved with a new group called the Canadian Field Crop Research Alliance. And we're putting some of these goals together right now and trying to build partnerships with other provincial organizations as well as government and private industry. So we're putting together some big plans right now, and I'm looking forward to what I learned in Australia. I'm spending the next couple of weeks after these meetings trying to learn more about the Australian commercialization and intellectual property protection and so on. So, and I think I'll just wrap up by, I just do need to say a big thank you to Nuffield Australia for opening up the programs to Canadians and other countries. It certainly is a real benefit to my Nuffield experience to be able to participate in the Global Focus program and these meetings, and especially to Jim Geltz for kind of helping with all the logistics and inviting me to this meeting and providing all the information and organization around it. It certainly was a big help. And I would like to also thank my fellow travelers on the Global Focus program for making it a great experience. We really had a lot of laughs, some good times, and made some true friends. So this is just a picture of I think the second day of our Global Focus program, and I'm kind of looking at that picture and thinking we were looking pretty good then. Then I was looking at some other photos, and this was I think March 30th, about 6 weeks later, waiting for our bus in Brazil. It was about 3 hours late, and we were a little tired, a little hot, a little cranky. So thank you very much, Alan.